This is Jordan Poyer, safety for the Buffalo Bills, and you are now listening to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo Podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, joined by my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how are we doing?
I am an uncomfortable ball of overwhelming confidence and uncontrollable anxiety. I have no idea what's going on in my brain right now.
Yeah, I was on with some people many of you know on a crazy podcast palooza on the Trainwreck Network last night, and I my exact comment was, I'm uncomfortable with how comfortable I am. This is a weird feeling. I don't like it. I'm not supposed to be this confident. It feels wrong. Yeah,
but it's comfortable, but then every time I'm watching it and looking at these numbers and stuff, I'm uncomfortable that I am even confident at all. I don't know what's going on with me. Yeah. So this is going to be more of a cathartic experience to talk this out with you tonight.
So tonight's show is brought to you by our friends at Uncle Jumbo's, our presenting sponsor. We'll get into our friends over at West Her later on in the show. But tonight, in order to talk about our playoff opponent, the Bills will be going up against the Indianapolis Colts, the number 7 seed in the AFC playoffs, this Saturday at 1:05 p.m. Our friend that you may have seen some of his draft work over at Cover One at Blue Stampede, Zack Hicks. Zack, how we doing?
Pretty good. Like you guys said, I'm actually not too nervous about this, but it's kind of being the underdog. You kind of don't feel ever
house money.
Nervous.
No, run with that for a second. What's it been like in what your expectations were this season, and now where the Colts are at?
Oh, yeah. No, I feel pretty good so far about where the Colts are at. If you told me before the season that the Colts have finished 11-5, I think we'd be celebrating a division title. I mean, especially, with the 7 teams making the playoffs and stuff, I figured, definitely the Colts would be in it. There would be no drama going into the last game if you told me they were going to be 11-5. But, this past week was tough. We were all bracing for the fact that we might be 11-5 outside the playoffs. Luckily, the Bills were able to kill the Dolphins and the Colts were able to get in. But, now we have to face the team that just beat up on the Dolphins in front of everybody. But, going into the year, it was definitely a weird offseason because, they're still kind of recovering from the Andrew Luck retirement. We just went through that disaster with Jacoby Brissett last year. And they kind of got a better Band-Aid with Phillip Rivers. And Rivers, for the most part, was pretty good all year for the Colts, got up into the playoffs. And outside of a couple of, rough performances by the team and also by him, the Colts were able to get this ship right, and they got to 11-5. So, I feel like, I can speak for most of Colts Nation by saying we feel pretty good. Even though we're the 7 seed at 11-5, and we're going against a really, really good team here. I feel pretty good so far about this team.
Appreciate our man, Dan. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. As we get into it here, and Aaron's going to dive into a piece of this. I'm torn in, we were talking pre-show where I felt like there was that moment late on Sunday afternoon where, okay, now it's kind of been decided it can't really be the Dolphins. It's not going to, the Colts weren't going to lose to the Jags. That was, put away fairly quickly. There was a moment there where they went on that 14-3 run where I was like, maybe it's a game. I don't know. Going through and being able to kind of figure out where it was. Then all of a sudden, they pulled away accordingly as you should have. And then all of a sudden, the Texans come roaring back. And when they took the lead and it's sitting there and I'm like, well, okay, do I want them to come back? And, then we play the Colts, or would I rather play the Titans? And they're maybe better on offense, but way worse on defense. Yeah. And trying to figure out where that fell, it was weird for a moment there. Was the Bills aren't used to being in this position of jockeying for who we get to play in the first round. So it was a weird feeling. I wasn't used to it.
Yeah, I will say from our end, just watching that, I was kind of rooting for the Texans to pull it off because, a home game in the playoffs. But, I mean, the Ravens have been on fire lately, too. Whoever you play in the playoffs, especially in the AFC this year,
for sure.
Yeah, you're gonna get a good team. Maybe in the NFC you get excited because you're playing Washington or Chicago in the first round. But, man, the AFC, you either have to go against a red-hot Ravens team, Steelers team who's kind of figuring it out, Browns team that's looking pretty good, Titans team that has a stout offense, Bills team that's rolling up everybody. I mean, there is just it's just a loaded conference this year. So again, it was kind of just, hoping for the home playoff game, but at the end of the day, we got this one against the Bills here.
Yeah, that's where I was at too with you, that I wasn't really trying to avoid any particular team because every team's there's matchup nightmares really across the AFC. And I think a lot of Bills fans here on Twitter are sleeping on some of the matchups that the Colts present on both sides of the ball and how well-rounded this team is. And I think part of that is a lack of primetime Indianapolis Colts viewing from casual fans. Like, we have not seen a lot of, if you're watching the Bills games, you're playing the same slots for the most part as the Colts, or you're watching Red Zone and only seeing, parts of Colts games and not watching the whole thing. But this is a really well-rounded team. And I look back and think about the Titans a year ago when their defense was playing well and they had a ground game going and efficient quarterback play. That's more what I think of this Colts team here this year. I want to dive into a little bit this defense because, again, I don't think a lot of Bills fans have been able to see this team. I think we've heard during the season, early in the season, Colts, Steelers, these were the best defenses in the NFL, but everyone sort of kind of laughed that off because defense wasn't doing good around the league and they just assumed nobody was really playing anyone and that's why their defense was good. But it is a solid unit. It reminds me of some of the units that we've played already this year in the Rams and the Niners, where there's not all the big names. There's a couple, right? We know everybody knows Buckner, everybody knows Houston, Xavier Rhodes, Darius Leonard. It's not loaded with big names, but there's a ton of talent across all the levels of this defense. Can you kind of fill us in sort of the overall defense, the scheme that we're going to see? This is obviously a zone heavy, sort of fill us in what Bills fans should expect to see, how this defense operates and sort of the overall view of it.
Yeah, so when you're looking at the Colts defense, I think they overperformed a little bit this year, especially early in the year. When they were up there with DVOA, like the number 1 and number 2 defense in the league, that was a little bit of a facade. They really weren't that level of defense. They were going against kind of the Jets, and Kirk Cousins had a bad game with the Vikings. It was kind of stuff like that, but I'm not saying that as a way to discount what the Colts have done this year on defense. They are a top 10 unit, and they're one of the best in the league at stopping the run. They're solid against the pass. They do give up a lot of yards, but they don't give up that many touchdowns. But yeah, they're a zone heavy defense, and they actually come from Matt Eberflus, defensive coordinator, who's getting a lot of head coaching looks right now. Comes from kind of that same mold that Leslie Frazier came from, that Tony Dungy type of coaching tree. So it's a little bit multiple, but it's a lot of those zone stuff there. Eberflus kind of likes that Tampa 2 zone cover 2 style on defense. I will say, though, with the addition of like DeForest Buckner and a couple other guys on the defensive line, he's been able to kind of mix up his coverages a little bit and kind of be a little more diverse in the secondary because he doesn't have to worry too much about adding pressure, adding guys into the box to create pressure, because a guy like DeForest Buckner can get all the pressure that you really need up front. But I really like what Matt Eberflus has done with this defense. They, for the most part, don't blitz very much. They are, I think, second lowest in the NFL in terms of blitz percentage. But when they have to against guys like Deshaun Watson or Pat Mahomes in recent years, they do a really good job of keeping up pressure as well. So it's a good group. I think recently the passing numbers they've given up is kind of getting people to think they're not as good a group as what they are, which, obviously they are giving up a lot of passing yards, but mostly it's just yards. They're not giving up that many scores. And when they do kind of give up the points they do, it is kind of in quick spurts. So if you're the Bills and you're looking at this defense, you really got to capitalize on those quick spurts when you can score, because when the Colts adjust, they typically do lock it down. Like we saw it against the Packers. The Packers scored, I think, 4 touchdowns in the first half and were kind of firing on all cylinders, and then scored 3 points the rest of the game. And that's one of the best offenses in football. So they're a defense that flies around, very technically sound, doesn't miss very many tackles, but there are some areas to exploit kind of in that zone, which has led to the big passing numbers and some inconsistent play. But overall, I think they're a really solid defense, and it's not one of the group that you could really overlook.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about some of the opportunities to exploit the zone, and I think one of the biggest things is Bills getting Cole Beasley back, which we haven't heard really anything about him. He was another non-participant in practice here today. Obviously, Diggs was also a non-participant, but he said in his press conference that there's nothing to worry about, so who knows what's going on there. But getting Beasley back is going to be huge because really that is their zone beater, right, for the Buffalo Bills. So can you talk about some of the things that worry you, one, about this Bills offense? Obviously, Josh Allen's a dynamic weapon. The run game is productive, but you guys are a pretty good run down. I don't think Indianapolis is super worried about the Bills' run game, but stopping Josh Allen, both with the ability to extend plays with the zone defense, but then also the plethora of receivers, assuming we have a healthy Cole Beasley going into this game. What do you think play to the strengths of the Colts defense, and then how maybe Buffalo can exploit some of those weaknesses a little more in detail?
Yeah, so when I look at the Bills' offense, one thing is definitely Cole Beasley. Personally hoping he does not play this week. That would be great. On paper, when you look at, the Colts have one of the best slot corners in football in Kenny Moore, but they don't play enough man to where you can say, oh, Kenny Moore is just going to take away Cole Beasley. That's not really an aspect that really means anything. It's just kind of where they line up. It's going to be near each other, but the Colts do a lot of zone. But yeah, the biggest, the absolute biggest worry I have, and the one way that I can really see the Bills kind of running away with this game, if it does come to that, is if the Colts do sit in that Tampa 2 and that cover 2 for a lot of this game, and they're unable to get pressure up front with 4. Someone if Buckner's just not consistently getting back there, if Autry and these other guys, or maybe they're just doubling Buckner all game and Autry and Houston aren't able to get back there, Josh Allen's going to kill a cover 2 zone. You cannot just sit back and play cover 2 against Josh Allen. Allen is, throws too good a ball. He's been too accurate this year. He's too aggressive even to kind of have that kind of zone work against him. I hope they don't sit in that cover 2. I do think that, again, like I said, Eberflus done a good job at switching into some cover 3 looks this year and some cover 1 looks. But the one area where I really think this Colts defense can take advantage, where they've kind of been able to take advantage of quarterbacks like Josh Allen, and this has kind of been my quote of the whole week here, so I'll throw it on here as well. The Colts defense has to treat Josh Allen like he's Pat Mahomes or like he's Deshaun Watson. Mm-hmm. And those are quarterbacks. Yeah, and those are quarterbacks they've played a lot the last couple of years. They've played those quarterbacks 9 times over the last 3 years. And I just put this on Twitter, I believe. They've had 37 sacks and 9 turnovers forced in 9 games against those quarterbacks. Those are 2 elite quarterbacks, and they're able to get the pressure, get sacks, force a couple turnovers. You're not going to stop elite quarterbacks. And the Colts need to go into this matchup with that thought process of, we're not going to stop Josh Allen. If we can get those sacks, if we can scheme up pressures, if we can speed up his process, then we can slow him down or create enough negative plays to kind of prevent their offense from dropping big points on us. So I do think Eberflus has done a great job with that in the past. If you look at some of the games that Watson and Mahomes had against the Colts in the past, it hasn't been like their best games of their careers. So I think if he goes into the mindset with that, the Colts should be fine. But my biggest fear is they sit in that cover 2 all day, and Josh Allen's just able to pick it apart with Diggs and Gabriel Davis and John Brown and all these weapons that you guys have, just attacking that middle of the zone of the defense and getting those big chunk plays.
And do you anticipate, I know we're talking they play a lot of zone, but I watched a couple of those Texans games here, and I did see a little bit more blitzing on Deshaun Watson, especially a third down. They'll try to get some pressure on him, and it was working against Watson. Now, I think the Bills' offensive line and blitz recognition a little bit better than the Texans. Deshaun Watson's always under pressure, it seems. But do you think that's something that they're looking at on tape with the success that they've had against some of the more mobile guys and younger guys that we might see a little bit more of a, not necessarily a blitz heavy, it's not going to be Pittsburgh Steelers defense again, but are we going to see some of that in past situations where they're just going to send an extra guy at Josh?
Yeah, and actually I think a guy just mentioned it down here in the comments, said that Josh was sacked 7 times against Seattle. I actually am writing something about that here for San Pete Blue tomorrow. But that was kind of a game that I looked at for the Colts as a way that you can take away an aspect that can work for this defense. Like you said, against like Watson and against Mahomes, they do a lot of pressure things where it's not just, we're going to line up 7 guys in the box and bring all 7. Right. It's a lot of window dressing, and you guys, if you guys saw that Seattle game, the Seahawks did a lot of work with getting guys in the box, and sometimes it would just be 4 guys coming, and the other guys would drop out, and it was confusing the looks up front, even against a decent offensive line like the Bills. That's something that Eberflus done a great job with in his time with the Colts against those matchups against Watson and Mahomes. So I think that's an area where they can exploit. Not that necessarily the Bills are bad in that area whatsoever, but like I said, any way that you can really blitz, and even if it's not blitzing, just showing pressure without even bringing pressure and speeding up that process, I think that's something that Eberflus is going to look to do this week, dropping into those quick zones, bringing some fire blitzes, bringing some simulated pressures. I think it's anything to kind of get Allen out of his groove. I think he's going to do that, and I think he is going to attack this matchup like it is a Deshaun Watson type, which he should be doing.
Yeah,
Josh Allen's that type of improv, he's that way as an improvisational quarterback, and also that skill level right now.
Absolutely. And one more here before I toss you over to Greg for him to take care of you here. And I agree with you. I think I've said it all year on this show that if you can even get Josh 1/2 a second or a second in processing to switch it up, that's really the mode to try to get him to do some of that stuff that we've seen in the past of making the stupid throw or, getting a little bit sugar high. I agree with you. That's a good plan of attack. We talked about it a little bit here. The run defense has been real solid this year. Derrick Henry's not lining up for the Buffalo Bills today. That's the only time I really saw anybody impose their will, really, on the Colts in the run game. We've seen kind of limited success. Your top 10 rushing defense by pretty much every metric here. Mm-hmm. There's got to be weaknesses, though, right? So talk to us about some of the weaknesses that are in the Colts defense that maybe the Bills can get. Because, again, the Bills' rush isn't it's not obviously not the power of the offense, but it's been productive when it's needed. Mm-hmm. Is it something that the Bills can get? When you watch the Bills on film, is there anything that worries you about the way they run the ball that can exploit some of the weaknesses of the rush defense?
To a degree, I kind of want to say no, just in a way, to say that the Colts' run defense has been top tier since the beginning of last year, right. Even before they got DeForest Buckner. The only running back in the last 2 years has run over 100 yards against them is Derrick Henry. Now, he's done it 3 times, but that's Derrick Henry.
We don't have that guy on our team.
It's Derrick Henry, unless you guys are going to trade for Derrick Henry, which would be great. But I will say the biggest area where the Colts kind of get behind in the run game is when you can get them out of their base looks. When you can get Grover Stewart off the field. Grover Stewart this year is 4th among all defensive linemen in run stop percentage. He's their nose tackle, has had a great season. If you can get him off the field, you get kind of more their nickel and dime looks out there, their pass rushing groups, and you can run out of those lighter boxes out of the shotgun. If you guys I haven't really studied too much of the Bills' run game, but if that's something they like to do when their pass game is kind of heavy, that's an area where they can get some chunk plays in the run game. But if you're trying to line up and run hard, run heavy against the Colts' run defense, it typically doesn't work. Guys like DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart are really hard to block one-on-one. And then if you do try to double them up and you try to get a tight end to chip on Justin Houston or Danico Autry, those guys are just way too huge to chip with a tight end. They usually run right through those guys. So, it's a stout run defense. And I haven't even mentioned the guys behind them like Darius Leonard, who's just one of the faster, more aggressive linebackers in football. But, when they get behind the sticks and they kind of are watching for that pass and they can get those lighter blocks, that's when you can really get some good looks. And like someone just mentioned here, if you have a running quarterback as well, running quarterback can definitely add to that because, you can do read options out of the guns against lighter boxes, and that can lead to some more success that way.
I'm personally hoping that you guys take the Pete Carroll approach and put a great deal of time and effort into the run game plan to shut it down, and really the Bills then pass the ball 28 of the first 30 plays. And you'll just spend the press conference after the game saying, "But we had a really great plan to stop the run. We couldn't believe they passed the ball so much."
Dude, I think somebody actually mentioned, because I was talking about that Seahawks game, and they were like, "Yeah, but he shredded the Seahawks." I'm like, "We're taking aspects of that. We're not taking their secondary. We're not taking." On secondary, we're not taking, devoting everybody to the box. We're taking the way they blitz. That's how we're doing that. Nothing else.
So switching over to the other side of the ball, I think there's obviously people know some of the names for fantasy football, but I think really the stars of the show is that offensive line. And I think that the combination, everybody knows Quentin Nelson. I think Braden Smith has a great name for himself. I'm really impressed with Ryan Kelly. Just so good. So first, who do you think we're going to see from Holden or Veldier or Chaz Green? I saw getting reps. And so I would love if Chaz Green was the starting left tackle in the playoff game. That would be delightful. well, I've seen the reports, and I know maybe everybody's going to hold things tight to their chest in a playoff week here. So talk a little bit about the offensive line and what some of those dominating presences are. And for anyone who knows, when we get to draft season, a lot of us use the relative athletic score and those RAS scores. Yeah. The Colts have like the RAS all-star team across their offensive line and some of the best athletes in the NFL there. So first, who do you see playing there, and then just tell us a little bit about what that opens up before we get into the other fun toys.
Yeah, so when you look at this offensive line, they're going to be starting 4 of the 5 guys that they've had since the beginning of 2018, essentially. Braden Smith's going to be their right tackle, and when you speak of RAS, just to preface this, I think 4 of their 5 guys, the 4 guys who have been starting for the last couple of years are all above 9 in RAS. I think Quentin Nelson is like 9.6, Braden Smith is like 9.3. They're all 9 point something.
Braden Smith was actually a little higher than Quentin Nelson, if that tells you how ridiculous of an athlete Braden Smith is.
Yeah. Well, he had like a 46 bench rep or something. Like, it was insane. While also scooting and all the other stuff. Yeah. No, they're all athletic freaks, and that's kind of what the Colts like on their offensive line. But Braden Smith is going to be their right tackle. He's been excellent this year. 0 sacks allowed and over 500 pass block attempts. Mark Lewinsky is the right guard. He's always kind of been pegged as their weak link on the offensive line, but the weak link on that line is a pretty solid player still. He's been league average to slightly above average at right guard the last couple of years, and he's a mauler in the run game. He has some struggles in the pass game, and that's kind of an area where the Bills can exploit a little bit. But
Ed Oliver versus Glowinski is one I'm interested to see.
Yeah. If you can get one-on-one with him, that's probably your best bet for getting some interior pressure. Ryan Kelly started off the year great, has been slightly going down a little bit since he got a neck injury halfway through the year, but he's still playing at a pretty high level. Quentin Nelson's actually started the year kind of slow for his for who he is, but slow is still like a Pro Bowl level, and he's really picked it back up to being that all-pro that he's been at. And then the big questions at left tackle, it's looking like it's going to be Jared Valdir, who stepped in last week. He had a couple of lapses in pass protection where I think it was just speed got to him. He hasn't played all year, and he's an older tackle. I think the speed to the outside did get to him. But my biggest takeaway from that game was he was an absolute bulldozer in the run game. I mean, better than we've seen from Anthony Costanzo in years. Anthony Costanzo is a great tackle. He's out for the rest of this year. But Jared Valdir was moving guys like I have never seen Costanzo move guys. So if he comes out playing like that this weekend, the Colts run game is just going to be a little bit better than what it's been all year even. And we kind of saw that with Taylor running for 250 last week.
Yeah. Let's go right into that. Yeah. From a run game standpoint, Eric did a really nice breakdown of the progression for of what we've seen from Taylor, and it was really infuriating to see. I didn't enjoy it at all. So talk a little bit about, I know more from a data standpoint, from a fantasy standpoint, and then digging in a little bit, seeing some of the things I heard comments about, questions for his vision. And I don't know how much of that was issues with it or sending a message with the Jordan Wilkins move at that point versus what we've seen over the second half of the season. Somebody who lives and breathes this, how much of that was needing to learn a lesson, genuine questions, or him finally just letting it click and understanding how to use the blocking in front of him? Because it's night and day. The first half and second half numbers are, alarming for Taylor. And then you throw in maybe the best change of pace in the NFL with Nyheim Hines. It's certainly that is where my major concern is. That's where, if somebody's going to build the recipe of how to do this, you talked about it with Aaron, DeForest Buckner, some playmaking guys on the second level, and then an offense that can have an offensive line and a running game that can go on 12 and 15 play drives. That's the recipe of what an upset looks like against the Bills. Talk a little bit about how Taylor has turned into this weapon he's become the last couple weeks.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, honestly. And I think there are definitely some aspect, some different elements that go into that. But to start off, early in the year, Taylor did not look anything like this type of caliber of back. He looked, I don't want to say like a bust because obviously it's a rookie, but he was tiptoeing through holes. He wasn't making guy miss. I think through week 10, he had 7 missed tackles for us on the year through week 10. Like, that's awful.
That's a normal Sunday for Kamara.
Yeah, that's normal Sunday for Kamara, normal Sunday for Nyheim Hines when he gets the ball in space. I mean, that's for all those kind of guys. And to put in perspective, Jordan Wilkins, like you mentioned, had like twice as many in half the carries. It was crazy that he was not at least somewhat good early in the year. It was kind of interesting. And then you throw on that when he started making positive steps, there was always these setbacks. He made a positive step going into that Ravens game. Then he had that huge fumble that, I don't want to say cost them the game, but definitely set them back in that game and kind of led to that game spiraling out of control. And then you get to, his big breakout game against the Packers, and then he gets on the COVID list the next week. So every time that he looked like he was going to take that step, something kind of stepped back. But, man, these last few weeks, it's just kind of been a perfect blend of the offensive line is playing a lot better this year, and they're controlling their blocks a lot with like what Eric was breaking down. They're mixing up their duo runs, and they're just kind of running out of the same look, but doing so many different things out of that same look that it's kind of leading defenses to second guess themselves. And then you add in that Jonathan Taylor looks like a juiced up version of Marlon Mack last year. And Marlon Mack took 3 years to get to that point where he was last year, where he was confidently reading holes, and he was jump cutting defenders, and he was setting up defenders into one hole and going another way. It took Marlon Mack 3 years to get there. It took Jonathan Taylor 10 games to get to that point. So the fact that we've seen him make this jump to where he looks as developed as what Marlon Mack looked last year, but then you add on that extra element where if you give him one little bit of space, he can take it the distance. So yeah, it's been a huge element to this offense. And honestly, I want to say it's kind of like I didn't see it coming at all. I was someone who was fairly critical of Jonathan Taylor in the first couple games because at the beginning of the year he just wasn't producing, and there was space for him to produce. But now he's running confident, running hard, running with like just being able to set up everything. He's seeing the game so much better. But I do want to throw on the aspect of the offensive line is playing really well too. Like the offensive line is opening holes. I mean, you look at Nyheim Hines, the first 10 games, I think he was averaging 2.8 yards a carry. These last couple weeks, he's averaging over 5 yards a carry, the same span that Jonathan Taylor's running well. So, both these guys have gotten to the level where they're able to break off these big plays. And it's not just against the Jaguars. It was against the Steelers. It was against the Titans when they played. It was against a lot of these teams that they played against. The Packers, Texans twice. They're able to run really well on these teams. So it'll be definitely something to watch because I know the Bills' run defense has gotten better in recent weeks, but they haven't really played a rushing attack like the Colts in that span. So I think that's going to be a huge element to see kind of where this game goes this weekend.
Or we play the Patriots to give up 164 yards rushing, but 55 yards passing, and they kind of bounces out.
Hopefully, Phillip Rivers does not do that this week.
So, let's talk about that a little bit. His throwing motion still defies physics. It makes no sense, and then you watch him drop.
Looks terrible.
You watch him drop one in the bucket to Zach Pascal 42 yards down the field. Like, well, I guess it still works. I don't know exactly how it happened. You guys have a rotation of tight ends and weapons that you kind of intermix in there. There's, some names that I think you had some draft fans of Michael Pittman in the Bills world that are going to know that name. Everybody recognizes T.Y. Hilton. You've seen a little resurgence towards the end of the year with Hilton back there. Obviously, the offensive line and the run game is the bread and butter here. But what are you seeing with this passing game? And I know the Bills have built a much more modern pass defense and basically are daring teams to run the ball, and the Colts are a team that are going to take them up on that dare and going to give it the rest. But they're not going to run the ball every play. So as we come in here, where have they mixed it in? How have they played off of that, impressive run game where, the mix they had against Jacksonville? I would guess that's the kind of run pass mix they'd love to have coming out of a game like this. How do you expect them to approach that game? Because you can't only try to run the ball to beat this team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they would love to have the yards per carry that they had against Jacksonville this week as well. That would be great. Up to almost like 10 yards a carry in that first half. But their passing game, I feel like from talking to Bills fans this week, I think Bills fans are kind of underestimating the passing game, which I understand. The last 2 weeks, Phillip Rivers has not been 100%, what he's been the whole year. But this feared running game that everyone's talking about was ranked 11th in the NFL. This passing game that people don't seem to be scared of was ranked 11th in the NFL. It was a good passing game this season. It wasn't always super consistent. It wasn't this extreme vertical attack offense, but it made plays when they had to, and
4,100 yards is 4,100 yards.
4,100 yards. And he didn't luck into that by, throwing it all against Jacksonville. Heck, we saw it. He's not doing that against Jacksonville. He's doing that against other teams. This offense, the biggest thing with adding Phillip Rivers was it added a quarterback who can actually run this offense to not even just a high level, but just run it the way that it was meant to be run. He gets the ball out quick. He reads defenses quickly. It's really not too much of waiting for everything to develop. It's going to be, you're going to find that first read, you're going to get it out quick, get those positive yards, and stay ahead of the chains. That's kind of where this offense is bread and butter. They'll take their shots, they'll take their opportunities, but it's really not too much of a downfield offense, and that's where a guy like Phillip Rivers was a great fit. But the biggest thing, too, is just, like you said, they have a lot of guys they can spread the ball out to. It's not just T.Y. Hilton. It's also Zach Pascal. It's Michael Pittman Jr., who's had 100 yards in a game this year. Mo Alley Cox, the tight end's had 100 yards in a game this year. Jack Doyle and Trey Burton at tight end. They just have a lot of guys that can spread the ball out. So, for a team like the Bills, when they have a corner like Trey White, if Trey White wants to follow someone or wants to stay on someone the whole game, the Colts will gladly throw to somebody else. They don't like. I think T.Y. Hilton said in an interview today that he expects or suspects or whatever. I don't know if he has anything on that, but Trey White might follow him in this game. And for me personally, I'm thinking that'd be great for the Colts because they can go a whole game without T.Y. Hilton being targeted and still have an effective passing game. So that's kind of the big part of the Colts offense. It's not really predicated on one guy getting the ball in the passing game all game long. They'll take their matchups and their opportunities where they get it. It's a lot of crossing routes, a lot of pick plays, a lot of quick hitters to get guys in space and get those positive yards. It's not this elite vertical passing threat like you guys have seen against the Cardinals and even the Seahawks at times when you guys played them. But it is death by 1,000 needles, just a quick game, a lot of pick plays, and a lot of run after catch.
So before we get you out of here, tell the folks a little bit about Stampede Blue and where they can find you and give us a prediction. What do you expect to see this weekend?
Yeah, guys, so you can jump on Stampede Blue. It's like the Buffalo Rumblings of Colts. I know you guys have read a little bit of that over there. I think they actually posted one of my articles on there today because almost all the comments on my article were from Bills fans. So I figured,
we're a very petty people.
Dude, no, somebody commented, they were like, this is why I love Buffalo Rumblings. They post film stuff like this. I'm like, Stampede Blue. but you guys want to read a little bit. I feel like I'm trying to be as fair as I can, obviously, to the Bills in these articles, while also trying to find some way that the Colts can win this game. So I'm probably sounding way too optimistic in all the articles. But, go check out Stampede Blue. I feel like I'm doing a decent job with some Bills stuff over there. Also, on Twitter with Cover One stuff, we're doing some prospect stuff. Hopefully my team isn't looking at prospect stuff for a couple weeks, but if my team is, then I hope you guys aren't for a couple weeks. Whoever wins this game is the team I'm rooting for to win the Super Bowl. So that's what I'll say.
I can respect it.
Yeah, no, I love the Bills. I love what they're doing. I love Leslie Frazier. Love Brian Dabble. Just really, really fun team. Prediction wise, I want to be confident in the Colts. And I think there is a formula they can win this game, but I'd probably say Bill something like 31-24 or something like that. I think it's a game where the Bills will, their offense is just eventually going to have too many big plays or too many yards in the passing game where the Colts really can't stay with it. But I will say, for Colts fans watching or anything like that, there is definitely a formula that the Colts can get to win this game. But the Bills are definitely, I think, the better team and definitely have the better X factors when it comes to Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs.
No, that's wonderful, and we'd like for you to say that again. We appreciate you coming on, and honestly, anybody who hasn't seen Zach's film work, he does some of the best work out there. Really, really good, fantastic in draft time. So for Bills fans, definitely a great follow. Make sure you're checking him out, Zack Hicks 2 on Twitter. Make sure you check him out, and looking forward to a good game on Saturday. I think that it's going to be something fun.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, guys.
Right. Appreciate it, man. So, having somebody like Zach on, he knows his stuff. He knows the league well. He knows these teams well. And even having somebody that, he's similar to us, where he's an analyst, but he's a fan. Like he loves that team. He's not just, completely objective and even-handed. And even him to say it in that manner, it's just where my head's at. It's been so tough to look through. And it's not like the games against the Broncos or the Patriots where I literally couldn't find a path where we weren't going to win that game. There's a path here. The Colts run game, DeForest Buckner, those two combined, you have a potential game wrecker up front, and then a running offense that's good enough to keep the ball out of Josh Allen's hands. There's a recipe there that can make this work. I just don't think it's the most likely outcome.
I think there's multiple recipes that this works. Watching this team the last 3 days really crunching, I could just continue to think, man, Bills Mafia is confident, and rightfully so. The way this team ran the last 10 games, especially the last 3 games, we should have a ton of confidence. None of that matters anymore right now. This is a new season. This is an 11-win team that they're going up against. If this was in the regular season, this is probably one of the better teams they would play this year next to Kansas City and Tennessee. And we saw those games were challenges for the Bills to play well-rounded teams with ability at all levels and really evenly matched. I'm looking at the stats right here that I take down for every single week. Across DVOA, Bills lead in 6 categories, but Colts are right there in every category. This isn't like there's any real deep, big mismatch that favors the Bills in some dramatic fashion. Even their passing game, like he was saying, sneaky. I think we all just look at Phillip Rivers and it looks ugly, and he does throw some ducks sometimes. His arm is towards the end of his, the lifespan of a quarterback. But you don't, like you said, you don't accidentally have the type of season that he had. Like there's still pinpoint accuracy at times. I'm super worried about my boy Levi with Michael Pittman. Yeah. Pittman's exactly the kind of guy that's going to give a Levi Wallace or Josh Norman some trouble. And I know fans will be in the mentions calling for Dane Jackson. That's not going to happen. There's a reason Dane Jackson was in the Miami game so much. It's because they didn't want to push Levi and Josh Norman too much, with Trey out. So there's a number of things that concern me about this team. But I agree with you. I think the most likely thing is the outcome is the Bills winning. I think, we were talking earlier, if it was a 5-game series, I think there's no way the Bills don't win they would totally win a 5-game series, but that's the problem with the NFL is it's not. It takes is, a really good day in the run game and keeping Josh Allen off the field and, Allen, fans in the stadium and maybe he's too hyped and an early turnover like we saw against the Titans just takes that game in a totally different direction. And all these are very possible outcomes. And this team is well balanced enough where any of those kind of mistakes can really be the difference, and you don't want to get behind the ball.
And it's going to be interesting. I think one of the pieces we could see there is our player spotlight tonight. So our friends over at Uncle Jumbo's, appreciate them very much. Make sure you're checking them out at UncleJumbosDistillery.com. And I asked Zach a little bit about it. I think one of the keys to slowing down that run game and getting into Phillip Rivers' face is getting Ed Oliver on Mark Glowinski as much as possible. I think he can also handle Ryan Kelly. Obviously, I don't think anyone's going to get the better of Quentin Nelson, but we'll see where those matchups go. He's the best guard in football for a reason. But I do think the one spot is, depending on who's playing the left tackle, Jerry Hughes against a backup left tackle and Ed Oliver there against Mark Glowinski. I think we need to see that big Ed Oliver game, and maybe this is that coming out party.
Yeah, and we talk about a lot about the trenches mattering the most, and it matters the most in the playoffs in a big way. And I do think the Colts on the offensive side of the ball have the advantage in the trenches, and that is something that scares me. This has got to be a game. We don't need Ed Oliver to make splash plays. What we need from Ed Oliver is when they go to double team him, standing that ground and not blowing a big hole out of nowhere. And so far he's been able to do that, and he's not that one tech that everybody knows we need, but he's taken on that role and played bigger than his size a number of times. And even Brian Baldinger looked at his I think it was 11, 15 snaps against the Colts last year, and he did that against Quentin Nelson, being able to just kind of stand his ground and not get shoved around too much by Quentin. There's nothing wrong with getting shoved around by Quentin Nelson. It happens to the best players.
I'll guarantee you he's going to get a highlight block during the game. He's going to maul somebody here and there. It's that you can't let him do it every snap.
Yes, and you need to try to keep Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds as clean as possible to get good looks at Taylor in this game. And that's where I'm looking at the defensive line. Is I don't need them to make the splash plays. I'd like them to get the pressures. I think they'll be able to generate some pressures. But I'm really looking for them to keep the linebackers clean and allow those guys to play, because they're still a little over aggressive and they'll miss. But I don't want them to just get locked on blocks when this offensive line gets into the secondary. So that's really where I need Ed Oliver, is to be a guy that disrupts just enough to allow Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano to play clean, free, aggressive, because I think that's where you're going to generate the pressures on Phillip Rivers. I think that's where you're going to be able to really attack Taylor and try to get him stopped in the backfield, because tackling is going to be key. Bills secondary, Bills linebackers have to come up and play these run fits, or this could be a really long, annoying day of, like you said earlier, 12, 15 play, long, sustained drives. That's not a model for the Bills. The Bills need 3 and outs, get Josh Allen back out on the field. You do not want to get into a game where you score, then they take off 7 minutes off the clock. Like, we want to be back on the field as often as possible.
Yeah, our worst case scenario, if I'm going to build that recipe for an upset, is those games where you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, the second quarter's over. We only had 1 possession. What happened? And that they're driving. So the Colts don't have a lot of wiggle room to be able to pull this off. They don't have a high-flying passing offense that can go shot for shot. They can't. Somebody brought it up in the chat. They ran for 253 yards against the Jags, and the Jags had the ball down 6 with about 4 minutes left in that game.
Right.
So just having a dominating running game isn't by itself enough to put that away. They have to control the clock. They have to score touchdowns and not field goals. They have to produce multiple turnovers. But if they do, and when you have guys at each level, people don't know Kaiir Willis's name. He's a really, really good safety.
Yeah, he's on the film everywhere.
Yeah, Kenny Moore is an exciting nickel weapon that they roll around there. Darius Leonard might be the best linebacker in the NFL, and DeForest Buckner is a game wrecker at defensive tackle. If one of those guys has one of those, takeover games, and then the offense can go on 15-play drives for 8-9 minute drives for touchdowns, and all of a sudden we look up like, hey, we scored, but they're up 14-7 because we only had the ball once and we're halfway through the second quarter. That's the kind of thing that's going to get them into that position. And then if they steal a possession, again, they have to convert into a touchdown, but they have the recipe to do this. So we'll see where those matchups go. Flipping over to our friends over at West Her, if you find a vehicle that you like and you're looking for, 23 dealerships in the Western New York area, the largest dealership group in New York State. You find that dream car and you're ready to get down to brass tacks. It's time to talk numbers. Aaron, what kind of number do you expect to see in this game this week?
Put me on the spot for a score, huh? I see how it is. Well, so we talked a lot about this run game and that being the biggest fear. I think the way the Bills sort of eliminate that is to do what they've been able to do this year, which is put up points early. I think if you can jump out to a 14-point, 3-possession lead, that really takes that away. And I think the Colts will still probably lean into it more than other teams. Like, they could be down 3 possessions in the third quarter and they still have to generate something in the run game because that's how their offense gets.
Like San Francisco, like that game.
Exactly. And there's a way to come back in that, but that's not the way. You don't want to start getting into 7-minute drives when you're down 3 possessions into the second half. So I think the Bills have to come out hot if they're going to win this game and really take away that option for them to lean into the run and keep Josh Allen off the field. I think it's doable. My biggest concern is that I don't know that 6,000 fans is enough to really create a ton of energy, but that it's enough to make Josh just too hyped. I think there's a scenario where Josh is just too much hype. But even if that happens, I do think I agree, with some of what Zach said, where there's going to be a quarter where the Colts just don't quite have it and the Bills are able to quickly put up 3 scores, whether it's 2 touchdowns and a field goal. Like, they can just do that really quickly. I think there's opportunity for a defensive touchdown in this game. I think Phillip Rivers is going to put the ball in harm's way a number of times, and he does it every game, and they don't always end up picked, but he puts a ball out there where somebody can make a play on it. I think the Bills get some turnovers. I've got it 28-22 game. I think the Colts probably score late and make it a little bit closer, but I think the Bills defense pretty much keeps them to field goals early on and gets a decent lead, gets away with it, and then maybe they score a late touchdown to kind of get that game a little bit closer. But I think the spread's probably fair, and I think the Bills should be able to win this game. I think more times than not the Bills win this game, but this has the writings of possible upset, 11-win team, all the things we've talked about here tonight. If there's going to be a big upset in the NFL this weekend, this one's prime made for it to happen.
Well, people talk about it all the time. The most powerful force in football is nobody believes in us. If you look anywhere and find somebody picking the Colts, you come show me, because I haven't seen it yet.
They're all buying into it too.
Oh yeah,
all their press conferences, they are loving this underdog role.
Oh yeah. If you find one person picking the Colts, you come show me, because I haven't seen it yet. No. Now, the reason for that is the Bills are the better team. The Bills are supposed to win this game. I think the Bills are going to win this game. Lots of people in the chat here. I think if the Bills jump out early to your lead, if the Bills get an early 17-3 lead or something like that, this could be 41-10. The Colts are not made to come back. If the Bills jump out to an early lead, if the Bills are up 14-0 at the end of the first quarter, this could be really ugly. Now, the alternative is if the Colts are up 14-0 at the end of the first quarter, I still feel pretty good we can win that game. The Bills can come back and score in bunches very quickly. Sure. It won't be a blowout. They might not cover. It might take them the rest of the game to catch up, because they're going to completely take the air out of the ball and try to run the crap out of it. And that might be – so the 28-22 would be a score I could see that maybe the Bills are losing early. And sure. And maybe that's the Bills coming back from 22-21 and win the game-winning touchdown to go up there. I have it at 34-24. I think that they're going to be up, a little bit early and slowly pull away. I do think I see some similarities to that 49ers game, a really run-heavy team with a good defense, but eventually the number of weapons are just too much, and they just can't keep up, and they're eventually going to make enough plays. With such a zone-heavy defense, I think Zach's right. They're not going to sit back in that zone all day. I'd feel a little bit better if we had Cole Beasley, and right now I'm not expecting to have Cole Beasley. We'll see where that goes, but if we have the full complement, even without him, John Brown looks 100% ready to go. You give me Stephon Diggs, John Brown, Isaiah McKenzie, Gabe Davis, they're going to be fine, and they're just not going to have the answers to that. I think we pull away. I'll go 34-24.
I like it. I think Dawson Knox has some potential here for a big game as well, and not getting talked about enough. But, yeah, I think if I know Beasley's going in this game, I think that solves every problem that I have in the passing game. And even if he doesn't have a big game, just the amount of focus they're going to have to put on him in the zone opens up. Not
letting Willis and Moore freelance where they have to be focused.
Absolutely. And I think tomorrow's the day we find out if Beasley's going to, if he's still a not participant.
If he's full DNP tomorrow, I don't see it.
Yeah, and that's going to be a tough one, and that's really where I'm at in my ball of anxiety is really centered around Beasley. I think my confidence level in this team's super high. If I know Cole Beasley's playing in this game, I just can't see a way that they can really slow down this offense. I want to see more from John Brown. I'm glad he was healthy. I'm glad that he did some things in that last game. I want to see him be that zone beater if Beasley's not able to go. I think if you have those two, I know Diggs can beat anything, zone, man. I'm not worried about that. It's
actually sneaky. They may be able to put John Brown and Gabe Davis out of the outside, and people keep asking, who's going to replace Cole Beasley in the slot? The answer might be Stephon Diggs.
Sure. Absolutely, yeah. Especially with a team that somebody's not going to trail Diggs. You can put him anywhere you want, and they're going to just stay in their zone, and then he can kind of pick his poison, pick his spots. But I think that's also where there's a potential for a big Dawson Knox game. I think, obviously fans are frustrated with him, but last last game he had a very nice response to that drop touchdown. So he's got the ability to find some spots and make some plays as well. And you just add all those weapons up, and I think a team that plays heavy zone, that's a tough ask to deal with all those weapons that can find spots.
Yeah, and I think the good news is we're going to know pretty early. The combination on that is being able to. The Bills have the recipe to come back if the Colts jump out early. If the Bills jump out early, I think it's probably going to be an ugly day. Cole is asking, how many times do we pick off Phil Rivers?
I think we get at least one.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to say the answer is not zero. He does put the ball out there, and like you said, every once in a while that arm does betray him. He had 11 interceptions, so he wasn't over a pick a game, but I think that he still probably puts one in harm's way.
Yeah, I see a scenario where he floats one on a guy or leads a guy too far, and you just see a Jordan Poyer or Micah Hyde come up out of the screen and get their hands on it. I don't think you'll see – I think he's going to stay away from really challenging Trey White too much. I don't think we'll get one of those nice Trey White picks, but maybe Trey White in zone where he just comes off a break and gets that ball that's floated a little bit too far. But you're going to get some of those where everyone, like we said, every throw that comes off of Philip Rivers' hands looks like it's going to be a miss. And most of the time it's not. And it's like, how did he put that right in the money? But every once in a while this year, you're seeing it just kind of float too far. There's a miscommunication or something like that. And he's doing it a little too much. And I know PFF talks about those interceptable balls, and he doesn't have a ton, but he should probably have more than they graded him for, because there's definitely ones that are put out there, and defensive backs just haven't been able to get their hands on them. But there's definitely ones that he wants back.
Ken asking here, are Singletary and Moss going to look better than they did during the season? They might. I don't think it's going to be this game. The Colts have the number 2 rush defense in the NFL and the 20th best pass defense. I wasn't kidding when I said to Zach, I think I see kind of a Seahawks game plan here. If the Bills came out and passed on the first 25 plays of the game, I wouldn't be shocked. I just don't see any reason to try to beat DeForest Buckner and Darius Leonard when you don't have to.
The only thing I think you might be able to see some flash plays out of these guys is Leonard is similar to Tremaine Edmonds in the sense that he's an athletic freak. He's long, he's freaky, and he over pursues. If you can do some things where you leak a back out the other side and he's got to go back and chase down a guy in the flat, there's a free 10 yards sitting there. And I've seen that a number of times on film where he's over pursued a play and then the back leaks out and you can get some stuff there. There's going to be some stuff available in the flats for these backs where I like, especially when they drop into some of the cover 3 looks, when they bring some of the blitzes, there's going to be some stuff there. I think early on, Dable tries to get some of those plays for Josh to get going early on in this game that we've seen him dial that up. But I don't think, like Zach said, it's not going to be a line up straight and run the ball with Zach Moss. That is not going to be this kind of game. I think there might be a playoff game if they are able to go to the next month.
There's matchups where it could.
Yeah, that we'll see a big game from one of the running backs, but not this one.
Yeah. Anybody who's not listening to The Hoof, Sterling, our man over there, doing a fantastic job along with Eric and Anthony. He wants to know, have you decided on your pregame hype song this week?
Benny the Butcher, man, the new Mafia mix. I'm telling you, if the Bills do not play that right before running the team out on the field on the Jumbotron, that video, it's a huge miss by the Bills organization. That needs to be the new thing. I'm actually proposing eliminating the shout song and just taking the hey hey section of this song.
That was pretty cool.
Getting rid of the old corny shout song. I like it. I do it at the stadium too. It's fun. Needs an update. Stop doing it on field goals. Just on touchdowns with the new updated version, and we're balling. We're all the way to the Super Bowl.
I dig it. Taylor asking, do any of the guys from last week's second half play this week? I know people want me to say Dane Jackson or want me to say Antonio Williams.
Don't bite the bait. Don't do that.
I'll say not maybe second half, but as far as big players from that game, I think Isaiah McKenzie is still a role because I'm assuming Cole Beasley doesn't play. So I'm assuming Isaiah McKenzie gets more than his gadget role and gets some legitimate reps. I think the Bills benefit greatly from going in 10 personnel with 4 wide receivers against this team. Getting the Colts out of their base defense and they have some monsters on the defensive line, and specifically Grover Stewart, their nose tackle. Getting him off the field and into more pass sets helps the Bills. So I will say Isaiah McKenzie is the biggest guy from that Week 17 blowout of the Dolphins that we'll see. Any thoughts from any other guys you could think of?
Well, I hate that because you keep talking about Cole Beasley not being, and I hate it. I think you might be leaning into the right way there. But yeah, if he doesn't go, I think Isaiah McKenzie is definitely going to get more reps. I think that he's earned enough play even into the playoffs here. I think they've set up enough stuff throughout the year that some of those gadget stuff go to him a little bit more this year. I think that we see more aggression. I think that's really mainly what you're going to see in the playoffs is it's one and done here. So now you're going to see Josh Allen on some designed run stuff because, yeah, we don't want Josh to get hurt, but if we don't play aggressive and take every opportunity available to us, that season could be done. So you're going to see them go to Isaiah McKenzie more. Even if Beasley's back and he's not getting as much reps in the wide receiver game, I think they're going to use that gadget more often because he is a weapon. He's on film. You have to account for him more so than you did the first 8 weeks of the season. Now when he's out there, you've seen what he can do on film. He has to be accounted for. So I think you definitely see more of him. And obviously, I agree with you. If Beasley's out, he's in a number of snaps in this game. Somebody said Marlowe's always there, especially if they start to spread it. They get down and are coming out to spread it out. You're going to see Marlowe, but I don't expect to see him more than normal in this game. I think you're going to see pretty much what the Bills have rolled out consistency. They trust these guys. They trust Taron Johnson. They trust Levi Wallace, Josh Norman. Those are the guys you're going to see, even if they're having rough afternoons.
So Chris Spencer asking the same question. Do we think we see a bunch of 4-3 base this week? There was a time where I would have said yes. Yeah. You know, to give you, I talked about that San Francisco game when Kyle Shanahan rolled out 2 tight ends and a running back and Kyle Juszczyk in 22 formation. They still played nickel 100% of that game. I think AJ Klein has earned some reps. I think we see 90% from Matt Milano, and I think we see 80% from Taron Johnson, and maybe 30% of snaps from AJ Klein here or there. Some in 3 linebacker sets, a couple in maybe giving Matt Milano a breather. I think we see an awful lot of nickel the vast majority of the day, and we are not going to let them dictate our defensive formation based off their formation, and just trust that our guys can tackle. And that's what it's going to come down to, that Taron Johnson has just as good of a chance of closing the gap and, you know, beating the guy to the corner as what Klein does. I don't see shifting to the 4-3 being the answer to stop their stout run game. I
agree. I actually think the answer to stopping the run game is in the nickel. I think though Taron Johnson's incredible in run fits. Levi Wallace is really good.
All the sound tackling from the secondary is the key. If we give up some 12 and 15-yard runs, it's not the end of the world. We can't give up the 50-yard touchdown.
Correct.
They can break a run game, a run play here or there. We can't let it turn into an explosive, huge play.
Yeah, you'll see some of the 10-yard runs for sure. Yeah. You're going to see some big runs. But tackling from the secondary is going to be huge. Tackling from the linebacker is going to be huge. And I think the best formula for the Bills is in the nickel with those guys. I think those are the best personnel for run fits. They're fast. They're able to really fit good. They're normally all good tacklers. Levi Wallace, one of the best tacklers on the team this year. Taron Johnson's one of the best run fits on the team this year. Trey really stepped up after struggles early on in the season. And obviously Poyer and Hyde can come up in the box and play the run real well. And I think that's the formula for the Bills and their improved run game is just, hey, we know who we are. We know where our personnel strengths are, and it's in the nickel, and we're going to roll with that, even though, you know, they have the edge with the bigger offensive line. But that's where we talked about Ed Oliver. Like, I don't need the defensive line to blow up runs. I need them to keep cornerbacks, linebackers clean and trust for those guys to make the tackles and not give up the big runs.
Yeah. Ron, our man Ron, what's going on, man? Asking about, are the Colts second special teams any good? Yes, they
top
are.
10. They're top 10 unit.
They're right there with the Bills. So Tyler Bass had 141 points. Rodrigo Blankenship had 139. If you look at the top punt returner, Nyheim Hines is 1 spot ahead of Andre Roberts. If you look at the top kick returner, Andre Roberts is 1 spot ahead of Isaiah Rodgers. I think maybe we have a slight advantage in punting. But it's overall they have a very sound special teams game. There's not a big advantage for the Bills in that world.
Yeah, I can read off real quick for everybody if you want. I've got all the DVO things for you, and they're interesting. So we got overall, Bills are 4th overall, Indy's 10th. That's a pretty good margin for the Bills. Overall offense, Bills are 5th, Indy's 12th. The weighted overall offense, Bills are 5th, Indy's 10th, so they're better in their weighted. Overall pass offense, 3rd for the Bills, 16th for Indy, so middle of the league in DVOA pass.
That Zach spoke about that. I think people think they have a bad pass offense, and they really are pretty decent.
Right, and some of that middle of the league is because they lean on the run so often. This, I think, will surprise people. Their rush offense, I think people talk about it, and we're hearing in the media how good it is. It's 12th in the league, which, again, is a little better than average for DVOA. Bills is 22nd. Though, so which we know it shows up on film. Defense overall, Bills are 12th, Indy 7th. With the weighted, Bills are actually better than Indy when it's weighted. Bills are 8th, Indy's 10th. Pass defense, Bills are 12th, Indy is 8th. Again, good pass defense, really sound pass defense. They've got rush defense, Bills are 17th, they're the 9th. And then special teams, Bills are 4th, they're 10th overall. So when you line these up, the matchup, at least on it films the answer, but you look to some of these things, they're right there. And the same is for the toxic plays. Bills have more passing plays, they have more rushing plays. Bills give up more rushing plays, they give up more passing plays. Like, it's pretty much a seesaw when every stat line you're looking at. These teams are more evenly matched than a 2 and a 7 should be.
Yes, it's frustrating. And we've been saying this all the time. There's no easy path in the AFC. Every team that makes playoffs in the AFC is good. It's going to be a
Cleveland might be an easy path now.
Correct. We didn't know that they were going to be decimated via COVID at that point, but we'll see where that goes. It does give even more reason that if the Bills get through here, you're talking a home game against the Colts. I would bet an awful lot that Pittsburgh beats Cleveland now with how shorthanded they are, that it's going to be a home game against the Steelers, and then the Chiefs are going to play the winner of the Titans and the Ravens. That's about as good as you can draw it up. That's not easy. We don't have any Bears or Washington on our side of the docket, but that's the best possible scenario you could have drawn up to be able to put that together. So maybe 1 or 2 more questions here before we wrap. Over under 1.5 trick plays in the game. I think that's a pretty good line.
1.5. What counts as a trick play? Are we talking some of the gadget stuff?
Not the bump pass. It would have to be more than the jet sweep kind of thing. Something I'll say trick play, meaning something we haven't really seen to this point.
Okay, so like quarterback passing, like passing to the cornerback.
Yeah, we haven't seen a flea flicker. Where you give the ball to the running back, they turn around and throw it back to the quarterback, and then Josh throws.
I say under.
I think we see one. I think there's
probably a good chance of one. I think the gadget stuff will be there. I think something special with Josh Allen in the pass game or run game will be there. But, one kind of tricky play that we haven't seen.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right.
It'll show up in the scripted stuff.
Yes, it will be it's usually in the second or third drive late in the first quarter, and usually they'll set something up and know that they have it there. And I think we'll see one. Daboll's good for one every year, and it's something that you're not going to realize it's a trick play until like halfway through the play, because he's been setting it up and things that we'll see. So I bet it's off of jet motion. I bet it's off of one of those gold tornado tunnel screen setups, and it's going to be a trick off of that.
I want to reiterate, I don't know if it'll happen in this game. I believe in the playoffs, there's going to be one of those moments where it's like third quarter or a fourth down, and they run out and they're doing the trying to get you to jump off sides like they've been doing all season long, and everybody knows they're not jumping. They're not going to. Everyone's saying don't jump. They're not going to snap it, and then boom, Josh Allen snaps it and deep shot to Diggs. So a play like that's going to happen. They've been setting it up all year. I just feel it in my bones.
I like that one. That's a great call, and it'll be sneaky because that won't look like a trick play. Because once they snap it, it'll look like a regular play, but it's going to be because they catch them off guard, not being ready for it.
Yeah, and it's a situational one, so the situation has to line up just right, where the clock's running down, or it's a fourth down, and nobody thinks they're going to do it. And then boom.
Here's a good one from Elijah. They've been trying for that fat man touchdown all season long. Now, unfortunately, they've been trying for that fat man touchdown all season long, so defenses are kind of aware of it. If they come in a jumbo set, I don't even think people think we're going to pass. If we go in a jumbo set, I think they think we're going to try for the fat man touchdown. So we'll see where that goes, but I'd love to see it. I'd love to see. They've tried it to Ryan Bates like 3 times this season, so we'll see where that one goes.
More of those numbers run out. Mark Ryan, a member of our Slack channel, fun member, I owe him a T-shirt of his choosing from 26 shirts if Ryan Bates gets a touchdown this year. So I'm hoping that they don't, but that's a bet I will gladly pay out.
Yeah, that would be a fun one to lose. That'd be a fun one to lose. All right. Any final thoughts for the people as we go into this Saturday playoff matchup?
Try to get some sleep. Try not to let this anxiety. A lot of people are confident. I think a lot more people feel just like me as a Bills fan, which is just the 20 years of beatdown that we've taken emotionally and in our soul and amongst our friends from other fan bases wears on you. And as good as this team is, and they're great, this team is great. And on paper, they're great. On film, they're great. They're playing hot. Everyone in the world's talking about us like they're great. I still have anxiety that it's all going to fall apart on me. And I know that everybody else feels that way. Just some people aren't willing to put it out on Twitter. Try to curb that anxiety. Have fun while we're here this week because this is really cool. It's really awesome. 2021 has not gotten any better than 2020. So the Bills are still the only thing that is really cool and normal, and it feels really good. So I'm hoping that this continues. I hope that they just continue on this really kind of team of destiny run that we're on here, and that I can just keep ordering more Bills championship merchandise along the way.
So much merch. I've bought things. Things have arrived in the mail. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
My wife's so mad at me. I just got the divisional or the division championship hat in the mail today, and it was just sitting on the thing. It's just like I didn't say anything for a while. And she's like, I saw it, and I'm not talking about it with you.
So some people might know the Bills Mafia babes. A couple of them have an Etsy store. I bought some ornaments, just because it seemed like the right thing to do. I now have a Josh Allen and a Cole Beasley and a Stephon Diggs ornament. Nice. They're actually really well done. But I didn't need these. I didn't need this in my life, but I needed to have it.
Yeah. I'm trying to eliminate stuff, but somehow more Bills packaging.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, just more and more shows up. It's unendable. All right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. I know many people were looking for this as a little bit of a break from everything going on in the real world right now. So hopefully that's what it was for you guys. I can't wait for this game. This is the playoff run that we've been waiting for a long, long time. I don't know how it ends. I don't know when it's going to come to an end. I don't think that end is Saturday. I think the Bills are going to come through for you. I think you should feel confident about it. I think you should be excited about it. And we appreciate that very much. You guys have been awesome in the chat tonight. Please go and tell other people about what we have going on here. It really means a lot. Give us a rating, give us a like, give us a review on iTunes, on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel. If you're listening on Facebook, join the Facebook page or group. Tell some other friends about it. Tell some friends that you saw having a rough day on social media to come hang out with us because it's a lot more fun. We are looking forward to this. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you to our sponsors over at Uncle Jumbo's and West Her. On behalf of Aaron Quinn and Greg Tompsett, you have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.